Thanks very much for reading to us. Well, if you'd like to keep that passage open, and there's a little outline as usual on the back of the notice sheet. Well, it's the passage where Jacob wrestles with God. Now, I don't know whether you know much about wrestling, but it's not really that popular these days, is it? I guess some of you who are parents maybe wrestle with your kids. I suspect Benoit maybe does that with Gabrielle. And I was with some friends in Cambridge, and now it was kind of 2 against 1, and there was a bit of wrestling. But normally it's a bit like before the Olympics. I remember the Olympics, and everyone wanted tickets to the athletics. We all wanted to go and see the athletics. And I remember a conversation with someone here at the 4 p.m. Service, and I asked, did you get any tickets then in the ballots? And they said, yeah, we did. Greco-Roman wrestling. And I was thinking, is that even a proper sport? I mean, what is that? I also, even since then, actually met an American, it's not Dan Hong, who got into Harvard on a wrestling scholarship. I didn't know you could do that kind of thing. But it seems a little bit obscure, doesn't it, as a sport, wrestling. And actually, it probably seems in our minds an even more obscure passage in the Bible. Here's what Martin Luther, the famous reformer, said. He said it was one of the most obscure in the Old Testament. Well, thanks a lot, Luther. And yet, it is, I think, a vitally important passage for us. So if you're tired from the weekend, buckle up and listen in. You see, in this passage, Jacob has an encounter. He meets God, and he meets him face to face. And so if you want to meet God, and if you want to be changed by him, this is the place to go. Many people say, don't they, that they'd love to meet God if only he would make himself clearer. I don't know if you've ever had a friend or a colleague or something like that who said that to you. But sometimes I wonder whether the question is this. Do you really want to meet him? Do you? Because meeting God is a very humbling experience. Maybe we don't want that, if we're honest. Of course, many of us here would call ourselves believers and have known God for many years. We've trusted in Jesus. But we're supposed to be humble, right, aren't we? We know that somehow. We've been taught that. But in our hearts, there's this thing lurking, pride. Pride's not the thing that we're proud of, is it? Of course, our culture doesn't really push humility, does it? The popular people at school, at work, they're the ones who make people laugh and do good work, and they're good at sport and that kind of thing. But maybe not so much humble. It's not really a criteria that's probably on your appraisal form at work. And there are pictures, as soon as you start to say humble, of people walking all over us. I was speaking to someone who's at the 6 p.m. service only recently, and they've just been on an assertiveness training course. I wonder if you've ever had to go on something like that. Well, I bet they don't teach humility on that. No, to be great, to get on in work, you've got to be ambitious. Not humble. You've got to prove yourself, sell yourself, get ahead, justify yourself, justify your salary, justify your role. We want the best, of course, don't we? For God's sake as well. We don't want to be mediocre, do we? We say to ourselves. And we justify it. On the other hand, though, we somehow like humility in our culture. No one likes a big head, do they? Jose Mourinho says, I am special. Ronaldo says, I am the best. And somehow we don't quite like that. It's not very British, is it, to say something like that? Kate Fox, she talks about this in her book, Watching the English, which is a great read if you want to kind of understand yourself as a Brit a bit better. And she talks about there this kind of thing that we do as Brits, kind of bumbling around, pretending that we're somehow amateurs in everything. It avoids all the social awkwardness if we do that. So you're good at some sport, or you play the piano well, or you're good at computers, or whatever it might be, and someone says, oh, that's great, you're really good at that, and we blush and we say, oh, it's it's nothing really, anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. You just need to apply yourself a little bit. You can do it as well. Or we have people around and we do our best bake-off impression, and people say, oh, it's delicious. I mean, you must have spent hours preparing this. Oh, we blush. It's nothing. You just have to follow the recipe, and it comes out like this. And so we want to appear humble, but it's not the real thing. It's not real humility. And I think what this passage teaches us is the thing that produces humility, above all else, is a crisis. It is the tough times. It is suffering even. It is when God strips everything else away, and then all we're left with is him. We've got nothing of ourselves, our self-trust to trust in. All we can do is hold on, cling on to him. Hold on with all the strength that we've got left. And I don't know whether you noticed as the passage was read, because this really is a crisis. As we see, first of all, that Jacob is face to face with fear. He comes to face with his greatest fears, Esau on the horizon. We've seen God bless him and make him into a nation, and suddenly there is a people. And all along there's been this struggle, but they've got there. Struggles to conceive, struggles to have the nation, and now the beginnings. But now a new struggle, a struggle to survive. Dangerous times, fearful times. First of all, the threat of Laban, we saw that last week. Now, Esau, who threatens to annihilate everything, annihilate the promise, annihilate the nation. Esau the hunter, the one who's good with a bow, the one who's handy when it comes to fighting, and the one who has an army at his disposal. Take a look at chapter 33. It tells us in verse 1 that he has 400 men with him. Head of Edom, head of the army at his disposal. They need protection. Otherwise, the promise dies out. It is fearful. It is a real crisis. It is make or break. According to the MI5 website, currently the security threat in the UK, the level is severe, which means that a terrorist attack is likely. But here now for Jacob, it's one level up. It's critical. It's imminent. He's on his way home. He's on his way home to the land. Guess he could have done a detour. But he can't run forever. He's been running for 20 years, but now he can't. And he's properly scared. He's full of fear. Take a look at chapter 32 and verse 7. Let me read it out for us. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. And then, just continuing to verse 11, as he prays, please deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he may come and attack me. It's scary, all right, and he's staring this fear right in the face, and it doesn't look good, but God has to do something, because otherwise it's all over. He needs God to make him favorable, Esau favorable. He needs favor. He needs grace. He needs protection. Verse 2 tells us that it is God's camp, and yet he takes matters into his own hands. He divides the family into two camps. There's a word play. The word Manaheim means two camps. And so it's not so much divide and conquer, but divide and survive. And that's his approach as he takes matters into his own hands. He does the math and he realizes that it's better to have 50% than nothing. It's the smart move, isn't it? It's the thing that you probably think you ought to do. And then he does another smart move. He makes a peace offering, a gift. But it's something over the odds. It's not exactly a stocking filler. Take a look at verse 14. 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milking camels, etc., etc., etc. And his plan, verse 20, is appeasement, that this gift will kind of buy him off, it seems, appease his face, literally, hoping that he will accept him, lift his face. If anything is going to work, this is it. It's the smart move, isn't it? Esau's name, the word Esau, means red or hairy, and it's not that he sees red so much, that he's kind of a fly off the handle kind of guy, but he likes the red stuff. The thing that's shiny and looks good and physical, and now that's what he's attracted to. That's the kind of guy he is. Even lentil stew. And if it looks good to him, it is good. Well, surely this is going to look a bit better, isn't it? It's a bit of a trade-up, isn't it, from lentil stew to meat stew, now that they've got all these animals. It's an upgrade. Imagine a kind of steaming pot of beef bourguignon with crusty bread, drizzled with olive oil. The garlic smell wafts around. Probably gets a Michelin star, rather than the lentil kind of microwave meal. It seems like all his Christmases have come at once. But he is paying over the odds. Normally, when you pay off an invading army, you don't give as much as this. But it is the smart move, isn't it? What do we think of that? What are we to make of that? Good? Is it good? Is it bad? Is this just Jacob up to his old tricks? Is this his plan to buy him off? After all, he's got 20 years of anger to deal with, and I guess for this kind of thing, an anger management course isn't quite going to work. In fact, I had a friend who once went on an anger management course because his boss thought it was so good for him that everyone in the team had to go and sit there in this room and meditate. Is this the next best thing to an anger management course? Esau wants revenge, he wants payback. Is this it? Is this what it's all about? Just payback? Or is there more than meets the eye? Well, you see, appeasement, it is good. It's the right thing to want, isn't it? To satisfy Esau's wrath. Because it is critical, isn't it? They are in danger. But I wonder whether it's a slightly more mixed response. It's good and bad. He wants the right thing, but the issue is how he's going about it. And so he suddenly starts this flurry of activity. But in the middle of all of that, he stops. And he does the right thing. He prays. That is the right thing to do with fear. This is the right place to go with our fears. We pray. And that's what he does in verse 9. And he prays to God, and he says, "O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, return to your country and to your kindred, that I may do you good. I am not worthy of the least of all the deeds of steadfast love and all the faithfulness that you have shown to your servant." He prays. And he prays in the light, I think, of the promises. He prays in the light of God's character, all that he's seen of God so far. He's brought low. Just as when we are brought low, when we're almost on our knees, then we get on our knees. And actually, it's actually the longest prayer that we get so far in Genesis. It's something of a model prayer. But I think the main thing it shows us is his humility. Did you notice what he said? He says, I'm not worthy. Not worthy of any of your steadfast love, any of your faithfulness. Not anything of your covenant love. Not even the least, the smallest thing. I wonder, what is the smallest thing that God has given you today? Maybe it was bacon over breakfast or jam on your crusty toast, whatever it was. But just think of all of God's providence, his kindness to you, even today, this week, this year. But God hasn't given him a small thing. He hasn't given us a small thing. He's given him everything. He had nothing. He had none of the promises, but now they're a nation, they're a people. Fast forward to today, we are God's people. You and me, if we're following Jesus, we are God's people. We have the promise. That is a lot, isn't it? It's all by grace. He didn't do it. There's no entitlement either, is there? It's a very humble prayer. Sometimes I wonder whether we think that our problem is kind of a worksy attitude, performance. But sometimes it's just plain entitlement, isn't it? But there's none of that here. Jacob sees exactly who he is because he sees who God is. And he sees that he's got absolutely nothing to bring to the party, and yet God has been wonderfully kind in his covenant love, in his steadfast love. And so he decides to stop running. He's got nothing, nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. And he throws himself on God's mercy. And he says, please deliver me. But it's not just the way that he talks to God in prayer. It's also the way he talks about Esau. He describes him as Lord. And he describes himself as servant. Well, I wonder how it might impact our lives if we prayed something like this. Tomorrow's a new day, isn't it? What a great way to pray. Or maybe before we switch off the light at bed tonight, acknowledging our need for God, this God of covenant love, depending on him in humility. And so change is afoot. He is starting to change. But he's not there yet. He's not been fully humbled yet until he meets God face to face. So secondly, face to face with God. He meets God one-to-one, if you like, and this deeply humbles him. The last time he met God in chapter 28 was at the gate of heaven, and it did humble him. It did change him a bit, but this changes him even more. There's lots of word plays, Jacob and Jabbok. And here he meets God. And he's always been the one who's been self-sufficient, self-made. Jacob, the name, it means heel grabber. He grabs at things, he steals things. He steals a blessing. But now, verse 24, he is on his own. It's night, it's dark, it's scary, and a man jumps out at him. A mystery man. Is this a mugger? What's going on? He's not got a name, and this wrestle starts. And Jacob, he fights back. He's fighting for his life, and he's holding his own. And round one seems to be even. Then round two goes. Apparently in wrestling, in Greco-Roman and freestyle, I didn't know this, but you get 2 times 3-minute rounds. Well, this goes on all night. They fight and they fight on and on and on. And then we think, well, Jacob, he's doing all right. He's got some crafty moves. But then a move gets pulled out that you don't learn in wrestling class. Someone, it seems here, this man, whoever he is, has got extraordinary strength. He touches his hip. That is it. And it's out of socket. And he's crippled, and it is game over. He can't pull any wrestling moves now. All he can do is hang on and hope that he survives. Hope that he makes it. But he doesn't just want to survive. He wants to be blessed. He wants the blessing because he knows, he realizes this is someone different. But he's not ready to bless him yet or be blessed. Until that is, his hip pops out, and then he's got nothing that he can offer. We're told in Hosea that he strove with the angel and prevailed. He wept and sought his favor. It's God's angel, it's God's messenger. And then suddenly this bizarre conversation starts in the middle of this wrestling match. What's your name? I don't know whether they do that in wrestling matches and start having a conversation. I doubt it. In the middle of this, an embarrassing question actually, because his name means grabber or deceiver. And so with one word, Jacob, he admits, he fesses up to what he's like. And as he does that, he gets more than he ever hoped, ever dreamed he could have. A new name, Israel. Now, some people don't like their names, do they? And they change them by default. Apparently, according to the Metro, so it probably isn't true, somebody changed their name to Captain Fantastic, Faster Than Superman, Spider-Man, Batman, Wolverine, Hulk, and The Flash combined. But even that name change doesn't really change them. I don't think that makes him into a superhero, does it? But this name change, it changes him forever. It's a completely new start. You see, names are significant in the Bible. And up until this point in the storyline, we've seen Sarai become Sarah. We've seen Abraham become Abraham. But this is totally different. Jacob, Israel. It's a massive change. It's a fresh start. It's a massive transformation. The whole direction of his life has been completely changed. He's been humbled. And now all he does is hang on, hold on, cling on to God. Israel means he strives with God, or God strives, and he has been striving, and it has been a struggle in life. But now his strength is gone, and he's crippled, and all he can do is hang on. But he has prevailed, thanks to God. The same language was used of Rachel back in chapter 30 in verse 8, where she was so busy prevailing over her sister. I'm not sure it was positive at that point when we looked at that. And she's competing with her sister, like it's a football match as to who can score, not goals, but how many children can you score, more blessing. But now it's positive as God ensures that he prevails. And the sun rises. And it is a new day. It is a new dawn. It is a new start. And he is a new man. At the end, you see this kind of scene of him limping off into the distance. A daily reminder of the fact that he has been humbled and held on. Now, there are different reasons, aren't there, in the Bible for suffering. We live in a messed up, fallen world. We see that, don't we, with the Paris attacks. But sometimes in a crisis, God brings us low in order to humble us, to keep us weak, so that all we can do, is trust him. Soon enough, it's awards season, isn't it? And the red carpet gets rolled out, and we've just had the Mercuries, and soon enough it'll be the Oscars. But we know that God doesn't promise us the red carpet treatment. But he is gracious. He is so good to us. And sometimes in his grace, he strips everything away. Our self-sufficiency, our pride. Between now and the new creation, when crises come, sometimes he does that. And he makes us weak, and he keeps us weak, so that we trust him, so that we hold on to him. When we have friends who are going through tough times, of course we want to listen, we want to offer practical care, we want to encourage them. But most of all, we want to encourage them to hold on to God. And it is a humbling thing. God makes us weak sometimes, so that we trust him. So that when all the fight is knocked out of him, as it was with Jacob, that's all we can do. And that is the pattern time and time again in the Bible. With Jacob, with Job, and at the cross, Jesus, brought low, weak, humble. That is true greatness. Jesus teaches his disciples, and he says this in Mark's Gospel, in Mark chapter 9. If anyone would be first, he must be last of all and servant of all. Or in John 13, which lots of you are looking at in RML at the 4 p.m. Jesus, on his way to the cross, washing the disciples' feet, saying that the disciples should do the same. Truly, truly, I say to you, A servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. And so sometimes God strips away all of our self-sufficiency, and then we hold on, and it's painful and it's tough, but only then can he use us to be gracious to other people. But it is also liberating, I think, because it saves us from relying on ourselves, our efforts to get into God's good books, relying on ourselves to get to the new creation, our ability to serve. No, we can't rely on any of that, when all you can do is just hold on. Jacob's got a new name, and he walks off. But before he walks off, he asks a question. "What's your name?" he says to the man. He doesn't get an answer, does he? But he knows enough. Verse 30. He sees God, he meets God face to face, and he lives. He is delivered by God. And now he knows how the struggle with Esau is going to pan out. It's the same pattern. He will see him face to face, and he will live, and he will be delivered. Thirdly, then, he comes face to face with Esau, and he's deeply humbled, and he bows down. And he bows not once, not twice, 7 times. Not knowing if he can look up, not knowing if he will ever be able to look his brother in the face, or instead of seeing that, see just the edge of his sword. And so he asks for favor. But Esau doesn't just look him in the eye. He embraces him. It's from kill to kiss. They weep. Reconciliation. It's a wonderful moment. No need for anger management courses. No need for any of that. All of that has been swept away by God. He has done it. Jacob is starting to change. And so he wants Esau to keep this gift. It's as if he wants to give back the blessing that he stole. He's starting to change as he's gracious to Esau, just as God was gracious to him. Deliverance is here. Take a look at verse 10 of chapter 33. Jacob said, "No, please, if I found favor in your sight, then accept my present from my hand. For I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of God, and you have accepted me." He recognizes twice that it is God that has done this in his grace. He's not acting as if he's a self-made man now. He knows much better now. Esau was the great threat, but now Esau starts to offer protection. And finally, verse 18, he arrives safe, peacefully, home in the land. He names the altar Elo Israel, God, the God of Israel. God has delivered him. He has delivered him to the end. It's taken a lot to get him here, but God has done it. But the way that he's done it has been painful for him. He has been humbled so that all he could do was hang on. He's reached journey's end. And in the end, God will do that for us. He will deliver us. He will bring us home. He will bring us there to the end. And in the meantime, all we need to do is hold on. It's a great lesson to learn. And it's good to learn now. And it's good to carry on and take with us into the rest of our life and into the rest of this week. Let's pray. Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this picture of how you humble your people and keep us weak so that we cling to you. And please would you help us to do that in this week ahead. In Jesus' name, amen.